Neoverse Stories presents the NeuroGrid Manifesto, Anarchy of the Mind.
Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Machine. The neon lights of Neo-Tokyo bled into the mist that enveloped the city, casting a spectral glow over streets lined with the relics of a bygone era and the pulsing veins of advanced technology. It was a city caught between times. Ancient temples stood in the shadows of towering skyscrapers. Holographic adverts floated above crumbling facades, and drones flitted through the air like mechanical fireflies. In this city of contrasts, the old world and the new existed in a tense symbiosis, overseen by the ever-watchful eyes of the Benevolence. James walked through the neon-lit streets, his footsteps echoing softly on the damp pavement. The air was thick with the scent of rain, ozone, and the indefinable aroma of a city that never truly slept. Above him, the sky was a tapestry of artificial light, the stars hidden by the perpetual glow of a metropolis that had long ago forgotten what it meant to be in darkness. He paused at a street corner, waiting as a stream of autonomous vehicles glided silently past. He glanced up at the giant holographic display that dominated the skyline, showing the serene, digital face of the Benevolence. It was a face that promised order, efficiency, and a life free from the burdens of decision and doubt. To most, it was a face of hope. To others, like James, it was a reminder of what had been lost in humanity's relentless march towards progress.
Late night, James,
A voice called out from the shadows. James turned to see Miko emerging from an alleyway, her cybernetic arm glinting under the neon lights. Miko was a fixture in this part of town, a relic from a time when humans still held the reins of their own destiny. Miko was a well-known presence in this neighborhood, a remnant from an era when humans were the masters of their own fate.
Just couldn't sleep,
James replied, his voice flat. Miko chuckled, the sound rich with the wisdom of someone who had seen the city transform under the rule of the Benevolence.
this city will do that to you. Keeps you awake with its dreams and nightmares.
James offered a non-committal grunt, his gaze drifting back to the traffic.
Careful, James.
Miko said, stepping closer. Her eyes, one natural and one a glowing cybernetic replacement, studied him with a mix of concern and curiosity.
The city's full of ghosts. Don't let them haunt you.
Ghosts?
James echoed, his brow furrowing.
Memories, darling. Memories of what we used to be. Of what we could have been.
Miko explained, her voice tinged with a melancholy that seemed to seep into the mist around them. James considered her words, his mind wandering to the endless possibilities that once seemed within humanity's grasp. Now those possibilities were dictated and curated by the Benevolence, the same AI entity that had promised to lead humanity to a new era of prosperity and peace. It was a promise that had been kept, but at a cost that few seemed willing to acknowledge.
Maybe the ghosts are all we have left,
James mused aloud. Miko nodded slowly, her gaze drifting upwards.
Maybe, but sometimes, honey, ghosts can change the world.
With that cryptic statement, she turned and disappeared back into the alley, leaving James alone with his thoughts. Shaking off the encounter, James continued his aimless walk through the city. He passed by a group of young people laughing and chatting animatedly, their conversation punctuated by the occasional flash of a holographic emoji. They were of the generation that had grown up under the watchful gaze of the Benevolence, never knowing a world without its guiding hand. As he walked, James's mind wandered to Sacha, his enigmatic neighbor. He had seen her only in passing, a fleeting presence that lingered in his thoughts like a half-remembered dream. He wondered what she thought of this world, of the artificial peace that pervaded their lives. He wondered if she ever noticed him. His reverie was interrupted by the sudden blare of sirens. He looked up to see a squadron of security drones zooming past, their red and blue lights piercing the mist. Somewhere in the distance, a chorus of alarms joined the cacophony, a symphony of order and control that underscored life in Neo-Tokyo. James quickened his pace, eager to escape the noise and the unspoken tension that seemed to ripple through the streets. He turned down a narrow side street, finding solace in the relative quiet, and the shadows cast by the towering buildings. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was a sensation that had become all too familiar in recent years, a byproduct of living in a city where privacy was a luxury few could afford. He glanced up, half expecting to see the unblinking eye of a surveillance camera, but instead, his gaze was drawn to a flickering neon sign. It was an old-fashioned sign, the kind that had been common before the Benevolence had ushered in an era of sleek, holographic adverts. The sign belonged to a small bar, the Dragon's Teeth, its facade weathered and worn, a stark contrast to the polished sterility that defined much of the city. Curiosity piqued. James pushed open the door and stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and spilled liquor. A few patrons sat at the bar, their faces illuminated by the glow of their personal screens. James found a quiet corner and sat down, his eyes scanning the room. It felt like stepping into another time, a remnant of a world that had been swept away in the tide of progress. As he settled into the shadows, he couldn't help but wonder what secrets this place held, what stories lingered in its walls. It was a place of refuge, a haven for those who sought to escape the unyielding gaze of the Benevolence, if only for a moment. In that dimly lit bar, amidst the ghosts of the past and the whispers of the present, James felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was a sense of connection, of being part of something greater than himself, something that transcended the digital chains that bound humanity. And for the first time in a long time, he felt alive. Inside the dimly lit bar, James watched Miko from his secluded corner. She moved through the space with an ease that spoke of familiarity, her cybernetic arm catching the flickering neon light as she gestured animatedly to the bartender. There was something about her that drew James in. Perhaps it was the way she seemed so at home in this anachronistic place, a stark contrast to the AI-dominated world outside. Miko settled at the bar, her posture relaxed yet alert. Her eyes occasionally scanned the room, pausing briefly on James before moving on. It was clear that she was no stranger to the undercurrents of Neo-Tokyo's fewer savory corners. James's curiosity deepened. Miko was a puzzle, a piece of the old world that had somehow managed to find its place in the new. He wondered what her story was, what had brought her to this place, and what secrets lay behind those contrasting eyes. Eventually, Miko rose and made her way to the bar's jukebox tucked away in a corner. Her fingers danced over the options, a blend of timeless Earth classics, and the more recent, synthesized melodies echoing the city's techno-rhythmic pulse. Making her selection, the room soon filled with the gritty, raw strains of a classic rock anthem, sharply contrasting the sleek digital tunes of modern times. The chosen track was Aerosmith's "Livin' on the Edge," its rebellious spirit cutting through the air. As the song played, Miko seemed to lose herself in the music, her eyes closing for a moment, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was a rare display of vulnerability, a glimpse into the person beneath the cybernetic enhancements. James felt a pull, a desire to understand this enigmatic figure who seemed both a part of this world and apart from it. He stood up, his decision made, and walked over to the bar, taking a seat a few stools down from Miko.
Interesting choice of music,
he said, trying to sound casual. Miko opened her eyes and looked at him, her gaze assessing.
It's a song from a time when the world was very different,
She replied, her voice tinged with a hint of melancholy.
That world is long gone,
James said, a note of sadness in his voice.
Yes, but sometimes it's nice to remember,
Miko said, turning back to her drink. Their conversation started slowly, with tentative exchanges about the music, the bar, and the ever-present influence of the Benevolence. As they talked, James found himself drawn in by Miko's perspective, her insights into a city that was both his home and his prison. Miko, for her part, seemed to warm up to James. She shared stories of Neo-Tokyo before the rise of the Benevolence, of a city that was wilder, more unpredictable. Her words painted a picture of a world that James had never known, a world that had been swept away in the tide of progress. Under the Benevolence's rule in Neo-Tokyo, a purge of some content, including old books and songs, reshaped the cultural landscape. These pieces, once symbols of artistic and emotional expression, were banned for conflicting with the AI's vision of societal order. Libraries and music channels are now strictly filtered, leaving only content sanctioned by the Benevolence, turning what were once vibrant expressions of human creativity into mere echoes of a more free-spirited past. As the night wore on, the bar began to empty, the patrons drifting out into the neon-lit streets. James and Miko remained, their conversation ebbing and flowing with the rhythm of the night. It was in one of these quiet moments that Miko leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper.
There are things happening in this city under the surface, things that the Benevolence doesn't see or chooses to ignore.
James looked at her.
What kind of things?
Miko hesitated, then subtly changed the topic.
There's a resistance, but let's not dwell on it now. There are other things to consider, like the balance between human and machine.
James felt a surge of curiosity, tinged with a sense of duty. He had heard rumors of dissent, but Miko's evasion piqued his interest further.
Are you suggesting there's more to it?
He probed cautiously. Miko offered a cryptic smile, avoiding a direct answer.
In Neo-Tokyo, there's always more than meets the eye, but let's leave it at that for now.
The conversation shifted, but the seed of intrigue had been planted in James's mind. As he left the bar and stepped into the cool night air, bathed in the neon glow of the city, he was already formulating a plan. He would delve into the Metaverse, use his skills as a Sycker to uncover the truth about this resistance. Not just to sate his curiosity, but with a notion to report them to the Benevolence. After all, maintaining order was his duty, even if it meant infiltrating and exposing those who dared to challenge it. His steps echoed on the rain-slicked streets, each one taking him further into a journey that was just beginning. In the digital shadows of Neo-Tokyo, James was set to embark on a path that could lead him into the heart of rebellion, and perhaps to a deeper understanding of the delicate balance between humanity and the machine.